This week on the Austin Healey channel, we make some progress on the engine and it starts to feel like a car again. So now that season 1 is all cleaned up, out of the shop, and running really good, it's time to get back to season 2. If you recall, we still have a few things on the engine to do before it can go back in. There's also a couple things I can advance on inside the car without the engine in place that'll be helpful. I can finally hook up the brake fluid reservoir to the master cylinder. But first I want to put a new water pump on the engine, and also the tappet cover seems to be leaking oil a little bit. That's going to be easier to fix now than later. So those are the goals for the week. Let's get busy and see how many we can check off our list. You can see the rust trail. It's just the rusty water from inside the engine block coming down along here from inside there where the seals failed. Let's talk about some of the differences. First off, you'll notice that this has the valve on it and this has a straight pipe. The threads are supposed to be the same, so they can be switched out. Also, instead of numbers here, it has the name of the company I bought it from. It's Boschstuck in Germany. On the nozzle here, this has a straight pipe, and this has a lip on it. The lip, could help keep it from slipping off, the radiator hose from slipping off. The impeller on this is supposed to be redesigned to be 30% more efficient, so it'll pump 30% more coolant, which in theory should keep your car a lot cooler. What else? The lubrication system. Let's see which is which. This has a Allen set screw, it looks like, and this just had a screw. In here it has a grease zerk, where this had the hex head. That's all the major differences I can see. It's not going to be concourse, but this isn't a concourse build, but it should work rather well. I've read some horror stories about new pumps not lasting very long. I think that some of that might be due to the fact of the way these cars are run. If they sit for long periods of time without being moved, and that's just not good for the cars. And I think that might be what causes the pumps to fail. So I got the valve on, and I wanted to just note that how do you tell which is open and which is closed? Well, this line here, I guess you could put a screwdriver in it, or you could get on there with a wrench. But this line indicates the path of the water. So in this position, it is open, and when it's turned across, it's closed. So I've been told we're not putting a heater in this car. It didn't come with one, and I think the engine keeps the interior warm enough. So I've been told with the heater bypass that if you keep these open and go ahead and let the water circulate through the head, through the copper tube, through the head, that helps cool things down. It keeps the head slightly cooler. So we're just going to keep it open and let it do that. Yeah, everything else looks good. It went on there really well. So now we can install it on the engine. There's still some blue stuff on the engine block from last time. We're gonna go ahead and put a little bit more on there. I got to say more on. Go ahead and get this on there. I think I want to get this hose started before I get this on there. Now we could leave it black, but that's not going to look right. So we're going to paint it green. Another item that came in is a new coil. So we're going to take this one off and put it on. Washer in there, and that. I'm expecting this to be one of those seals that's made out of leather. So let's get the new one and make sure it's gonna fit. Here's a new one. So it's gonna ride like that. Looks like it fits there really well. Looks like to be the right size on there as well. Now the hard part is gonna be to get this one out. I'm just putting some grease on this. The other one came out when the camera was off. It didn't come out easily. It does appear to be rubber though, which is interesting because the differential was not. So interesting. So this one goes on. Just added a little grease to help it find its way home. Of course, now it's all greasy and hard to get in there. I don't have a socket that is that big in standard, but 32 millimeters fits pretty good. There's oil buildup behind here, which is coming from the tappet cover. So we're gonna pull that off and put a new gasket on it. Hopefully that seals it up better. If you look down here, this is kind of where it's pooling up. Yeah, left unchecked, that would make a mess. So easier to do it, a lot easier to do it now than once everything's in the car. Sure if it was the tappet cover or this cover that was actually leaking. This is the housing for the gears that go to the RPM indicator, tachometer, or rev counter, whatever you want to call it. This is the inside of the tappet cover. It's down here, it's all grimy, so maybe a little leak in there. We'll clean it up, put it back on. The new gasket, some sealer. All the bolts that came out of them are the same except for these two, which are shorter, and they go kind of up by the engine mount because it gets really thin in there. Not much clearance to get in. Alright, it's time to start putting this back together. We got it cleaned up. First we're going to put this on. I have a new gasket. I have blue stuff on both sides. I'm going to put this in, but we're not going to like put the bolts on it, because to get the bolt in the tappet cover, this head gets in the way. But this back one can go in, and that'll help line everything up. Yeah, we won't tighten it up all the way yet. Guess we haven't talked about exactly what tappets are. I've used the word a lot. It's a funny word, so let's talk about it. Tappets ride on the camshaft. The camshaft tells them when to go up and down. So the tappet's like a little, kind of like a little piston thing, and then it's this part right here. You can see it moving, and then it rides in there, and then it pushes this rod up. The rod pushes the rocker arm, and the rocker arm pushes the valve up and down. Complicated system, but seems to work. Okay, so we have a new cover, a new gasket for the tappet cover. So it only goes on one direction. The bolt holes are in a strange pattern. We're gonna start with, you guessed it, blue stuff. Blue stuff's my new favorite stuff. Alright, now this slips in from the side. I don't know if I mentioned it, but this cover is made out of aluminum, which is kind of interesting. That took a long time. Hard to say why. It's hard to get the bolts in, especially around the engine mount. Getting it aligned with the gasket, through the hole, into the right place, it all just took a long time. And you know, each one is difficult to get to. So, well, there's about 3 or 4 that you can get a wrench on, socket on. Anyway, it's on. I need to clean it up and then touch up paint, and then we can move on. So since my last video, there's been some interesting things I've learned. The great thing about these Healeys is there's always something to learn. I'd written a while ago to the concourse organization in Kansas City. I actually grew up right outside Kansas City, so it was kind of strange. And they just published their latest concourse guide. This is the first time I've ordered one, so I was very excited to get it. And wow, I can't express how excited I am to have all this information. It answers all those little questions that you have when you're restoring a car, like what color should that be, or where's that thing go, or is this the original part, that sort of thing. Just the level of detail is absolutely insane, but in a good way. I'll put a link down in the description to the concourse guide. If you're restoring a Healey, I highly recommend it. Whether you follow the guide or not, that's a different thing. But knowing how it originally was lets you decide whether you want to go that way or a different way. And 25 bucks for an I think it's almost 300 or 400 page guide with pictures, and just a huge effort's gone into it. So link below, really good. So I got that, and I've been reading a lot of it, and not just looking at the pictures. And at the same time, I just put the transmission onto the engine. And Major Scope, longtime viewer, said, "Hey, are you using dowel bolts?" I went, "I don't think so. I don't think there were any on it when I took it apart. But I'll check. I'll go into the shop and have a look." So I got to the shop, and sure enough, I found some. Well, I had also read about them in the concourse guide, and it told me exactly where they should be. If I remember right, they should be at this one and one down at the bottom. It's supposed to be at 1 o'clock and 7 o'clock, so it's just off. And I think that's viewing it from the back. I could be wrong. It could be the other one, but either way. Let's talk about dowel bolts. What are they? Well, they're these little things. They're a special bolt that has the shaft, this part here that doesn't have threads on it, is an exact measurement. And that exact measurement aligns things, whether it's the transmission or something else. But it's used in the transmission to take out any slop there might be, or misalignment there might be, just using standard bolts. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through and loosen all the bolts so they're loose, so I have room for the dowel bolts to do their job. I'm going to put those in, tighten them up, and then tighten up all the others. As you can see, these dowel bolts are black. I found that in the concourse guide, that all the bolts around the transmission bell housing should be black. I also found out that the original, the transmission on the early BN1s was never painted. That's something that was great to find out, because it backed up the evidence I was finding. Most of my restorations so far have been evidence-based. You know, is there original paint on something, that sort of thing. So it's been a fascinating read. I've learned a lot, but at the same time, I still have my viewers writing in and say, "Hey, you know, pay attention here." So keeping the dowel bolts in the transmission will align it better, and it should prevent premature wearing on certain parts. So yeah, I just checked. This is the 1 o'clock position, and it's been recessed a little bit so more thread can stick through, so the bolt gets more threads on the other side engaging and holding it correctly. So this for sure is 1 o'clock. And I also found out my grounding strap is on the wrong side. It needs to go on the 5 o'clock position. And this is all viewed from the back here. So we have our... Oh, I need to loosen everything to get it to fit. And because it's tight, we need to tap it in. And that should line everything up. Other one, the 7 o'clock position, is going to be harder to get to. So I'm just about ready to drop the engine in. I didn't get everything done I wanted to ahead of time because the hydraulic line that goes from the reservoir down to the master cylinder for the brakes is too short by about that much. Very frustrating. So I'm gonna move ahead. I can get to that later, it's just a little more inconvenient. Right now, I have the engine ready. It's already out of the old stand. I have the transmission wrapped up because that's the part that usually bangs into everything. Where on the frame where the clutch sticks out, there's a post on either side. I have some old socks that I've covered those posts with to try to keep scratches to a minimum. Sure, it's going to bump into stuff as I go in, but the fewer the better. You can always touch them up. So let's do it. I'm really glad I put the sock on. I think it really helped protect the oil pan as everything went in place. Actually, I have a couple on there, because that's just dangerous. Each time you do this, you learn something. The first time I did this, during season 1, I didn't tighten these until I had the radiator all in place and stuff, and it was really hard to get to them. So with the engine in place, I now have the weight on the car, and I can tighten these up like they're supposed to be. So I mentioned that I've been reading the concourse guide, and it's answering all sorts of questions. I'm not going to go back and change things that I've already done, unless there's like a safety issue, or if I have to take it off for some reason. But one of the things that did come up was this switch here about how it should mount, whether it's on the inside or on the outside. And they said that it should be on the outside, because if it's on the inside and one of the screws gets loose, it could shift over and the terminal will short itself out against the body. So that's a safety issue. So I'm going to pull it off and put it in the concourse way. I'm hooking up the drive shaft, which when I bought the car was sitting on the passenger floorboard. There are 4 of these special bolts. These are special because the heads are D-shaped. And then they go through and have a nut and then this locking washer thing. So I don't have them. I don't have them for the differential side, but and they also don't seem to be orderable. So what I'm gonna do is make some. How am I gonna do that? Well, let's go over to the bench. Alright, this is what we want. See the D shape? This allows the bolt to get really close to where the hole is without the head getting in the way. If that makes sense. So, what we're going to do, we have one of the bolts chucked up in the head in my drill. We have my grinder mounted up in the vise. We're going to grind the head until it's nice and round. Alternatively, you could use a crescent wrench and just strip it around. Next, we're going to put a flat spot in the head. And that gives us a D-shaped bolt. Now, because this is on the drive shaft or prop shaft, propeller shaft, when you modify these bolts, you want to make sure you have a bolt that's very strong, like grade 8 or whatever, because they have a lot of shear to them. You also want to have this shoulder that's very important, so the any torque's not on threads that are all the way up. This bolt is also a little bit long, so we're going to have to see if it's necessary to shorten it or not. Now, these I can actually order, but I'm impatient. I really want to have this drive shaft hooked up, so we're going to just cut it down to sheet metal. We're gonna have to do 2 of these.
If you want to come along on the ride as we complete this project, click the subscribe button. If you want YouTube to tell you every time there's a new video, click the alarm bell. Thanks for watching, and your support is very much appreciated.